Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of All in All with Alex. I'm your host, of course, Alex. Today, we have a very special guest, Mr. Jason. I don't want to try to say your last name. I'm probably going to get it wrong, but I'm going to try. You know what? I'm going to butcher it. Just
Do
going to
it.
let you know, but I'm going to
Do it.
try.
Let's hear it.
Fareas.
Fareas. Yeah, dude, that's as
Okay.
as close as it comes, bro. I've heard all variations. Yeah, that's
Yeah, I can only imagine what people call you.
yeah, right.
um, so, I hope everything's going okay with you today. I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to come on today and have a chat with me.
Yeah, buddy.
Um, can you give the audience a quick background about yourself, and then we'll go into the questions?
Sure. My name's Jason Fareas. Today, I am in the corporate world. I serve at the director level for a transportation company. I'm also a small business owner where I deal with food safety and compliance. I'm a healthcare, mental health advocate. I'm a podcaster, and all of this is really by way of spending 10 years in heavy meth addiction that ranged from being the guy that was manufacturing it to the guy everybody wanted to be around to the homeless guy sitting on the street that nobody wanted to make eye contact with because they were afraid I'd ask for something. I've dealt with alcoholism, I've dealt with addiction, and I've just kind of made it my life's journey to try to reach out to anybody, just one person, man, just to hear my story and know that, man, it's okay to not be okay. And sometimes the stories that we hear you can't connect to, so you know what, let me give you mine, and maybe hearing like the real will help you understand that some of us didn't start off good and get bad, and now we're better. Some of us started not great, got worse, and now we're okay, and that's cool. You know what I mean? It's all right. So
Mhm, mhm.
that's my new mission in life, is just to try to use my experience to try to help people know that somebody still cares.
Okay, okay, cool. All right, so can you share the moment that you realized you needed to escape the world of the meth addiction that you had?
Well, actually, I'm currently kind of in that piece of the story in my podcast, but things got so bad. Like I had a $700 a day habit. Um,
Wow.
Now, yeah, it was a lot. I was doing anywhere from a quarter to a half ounce a day. Um, Now mind you, I had made it to a certain level where that wasn't my price, but that was the street price. That was the amount that was being consumed. But once I started getting shot at, once I started being expected to shoot at people, once I was being stolen from by people that I trusted. Not that that wasn't happening the whole time, but now it mattered, you know.
Right, right.
But being homeless and I went. I don't know. It was some crazy amount of days without sleep. I went on like a 14-day stretch with no food, um, and it had reached a point where I accepted that I was going to die as an addict, and my girlfriend at the time, now wife, was with me through this entire thing, and she wouldn't leave my side. And I called her parents and told them to come get her. She hung up the phone while I was on the phone with them,
Wow.
and in that acceptance of death uh, started. It wasn't like the switch flipped, but that started the process of me needing to change. And then ultimately, and this is going to be a weird one to try to explain in my podcast of how we were homeless, but yet she wound up pregnant. But nonetheless, I wasn't going to bring a child into this world with an addict father. So that was the final flip. There was no way I was doing that.
Yeah. Well, that's good that even going through what you went through, that you still had the brain capacity to think, you know, to think like that. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
a lot of people, they may not be able to focus their thoughts to realize like, oh, hey, I got a child coming in this world. For
Right.
you to for you to have that brain power to be able to do that and transform, that says a lot about your character and who you are. So,
Yeah, my addiction after years of not paying any attention to it was just due to a lot of unchecked trauma and things like that. Like I was always trying to talk people out of like you would figure I'd be a horrible drug dealer, right? Because I would talk to like, oh, you've never done this? I'm not selling it to you. I'm not going to be the reason you start doing this. Like, don't touch this shit. Excuse me. Don't
you good.
touch this. You know what I mean? Like this is no good. But I always found myself still being the protector. I took care of people that were around me. If somebody needed money, I would take care of them. Like I just found myself in the position to be able to help. That was a piece of me that I never lost
Mm.
somehow. You know, so yeah, but no, thank you for identifying that because I've watched a lot of people not be able to come out. You know,
Mhm.
so
Yeah, I mean, and it's the blessing that you did because I mean, there's no telling, how many people's lives that you have changed. I mean, especially including your kids. Um, you know what I mean? Like I'm pretty sure you're, one of the blessings to them. You know what I mean? So, and your wife, of course, and I know she's a blessing to you, standing by there and helping with that transition to get you back to, maybe even a better person than you were before. You know what I mean? So,
yeah.
so that's great. I mean, you know, anybody should be inspired by that transformation.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope so. I hope I can reach, cuz like I was saying in our intro, like I've been to rehab, I've done that whole thing and I've sat in these rooms and they show us these TED Talks and you get this guy up on stage and he's like, "Oh, I was a millionaire and then I did some coke and I lost everything, but now I'm a millionaire again." And I'm like, "Bro, how do we connect to that?" You know what I mean? Because I didn't start there. I started
Mhm.
regular and I dumped way to the like so I couldn't connect and I found that it was hard for me to even try to begin to recover when I felt so alone and disconnected, like nobody understood me and how do I ever get better when nobody can relate, and these stories that I'm hearing, I don't relate to them. So my hope here is that, just to give people something to relate to.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, hey, that's what we're here for. So how do you feel that growing up in San Juan Valley?
San Joaquin, yeah, northern NorCal, yeah. I grew up everywhere between like Sacramento. I ran around all the Bay Area. But the Central Valley, I grew up in a cow town, dude. Like everything was a party, everything was good, and
So
I
you
it was real easy to overlook, because we were just a bunch of kind of badass kids, but everybody got together and they partied in the orchards and every weekend was a raging kegger and bonfires and the whole thing. So it was real easy to slip through the cracks, right? Because kind of everybody was experimenting, right? Like and I don't presume to say like that probably happens everywhere. I can only speak from my experience,
right,
but
right.
some people when the party was over went home and went about their lives. And then there was the group of us that kept that party rolling, and one decision leads into another bad decision to another bad decision and instead of making decisions that are for the good and for the future, you make decisions based on the last one you just made. So you spend your whole time looking in your rearview mirror and not in front of you, and the next thing you know, you're wrapped up in this life, this situation that you feel like you can't get out of. So I don't know if necessarily growing up in Northern California, I mean, it's really any town, USA, you know what I mean? Like this happens everywhere. And I think it happens more frequently than we want to let on because when any of us deal with any amount of trauma, right, regardless, everybody's trauma is different. It could be to you, it could be nothing, but to me it could be the everything, you know what I mean?
Right.
And when you hit that experimental phase of growing up and you find that thing that relieves you of the anxiety and stress of whatever your trauma is, um, you chase that, because for a minute you feel normal. It doesn't hurt, whatever your situation is. So, yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but I don't know that necessarily growing up in Northern California is it plays as much of a role. You could have probably plugged me in anywhere in the country, and the same result would have happened.
Yeah, I mean, there's no telling, but I mean, with them doing an excessive amount of partying, some cities or some states, it wouldn't be that way. You would have to travel hours to get to, a lot of the
Right.
party. So I mean, who would know? We wouldn't know.
I
You know,
know that growing up in a farming area, it made it very easy to get the ingredients to manufacture meth. Uh, because a lot of these chemicals that are used to make this drug are also used in farming, you
mm,
know. So maybe in that instance, that made it a hell of a lot easier for me to go down an even darker road, just because the chemicals that, like you were saying, like if you got to travel hours to find the party, you probably have to travel even further to find the ingredients. And I could go to a feed store and find some. I could go.
mm.
So I was definitely put in a position where accessibility, not only to the drug but to the ingredients, was very easy.
Okay. So, what inspired you to start the My Madness Method podcast? Or
So
or do you do that METH-od? Or how do you
no, it's, yeah, my madness method. I just played with some.
with
Well,
the word?
yeah, the meth-od was a happy coincidence, but my madness method is it was just I knew I needed to tell this story,
Mhm.
because see, here's the thing: is I've told these stories that have happened because they're so wild, and they're just even when I tell them, they feel unbelievable. And I found that the times that I would tell them, I was almost glamorizing them as though they were funny, and I would laugh about them. But the reality is they're not really funny, And I started this podcast. My producer and I have been friends for years, and I just called him one day and I said, "Hey, man, I got this crazy idea." And it was wild because after I explained him my idea, he goes, "Jay, you're never going to believe this." He goes, "That's actually all I do now is produce podcasts." And I was like, "Whoa, that's bizarre," because that's not what he did the last time we spoke. Um, but the idea here was is to get these stories out of my head, and maybe if I could just reach one person, like I would still be recording today if nobody listened, because I want these stories out of my head. I don't want to tell them anymore. It made me who I am today, but it's not who I am. And I don't, I find that I live in a rabbit hole of these stories, and I wanted them out, and I don't want to tell them again. Not that I won't talk about them, but I don't necessarily want to tell them again. And as I started telling them and getting these stories out, it helped me have like these epiphanous moments, and I've gone through so much mental growth, and almost it's almost been therapeutic for me. It's almost like I'm sitting down and having a session by working through these traumatic events that have happened, and I've really been able to get down to the bottom of my why. you know um why was I an addict? Why did I this? Why did I that? And it helped me dig up my reasoning, my reasons, and so for me it was a mental health journey that has just kind of, it's blossomed, like people are reaching out, people are talking, people are listening, and that's fantastic. I love that. I want to know that, I want to know that my story can help somebody, but the intent here is I just wanted to get it out of my head, dude. Like I just wanted to stop telling these stories.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I understand. It started off as that, but then turned into something even better because now you're motivating other people to to go see someone or talk to someone about whatever they're going through, or
Yeah.
I mean, or they have a family member or something, and so now they learn something from you that they can take to them and say, hey, look, I mean, you should watch this guy. He dealt with this for 10 plus years, or however, and now he's turned his life completely around. He's got his own. He's got a couple businesses, and plus he's in the corporate world now. I mean, that just lets you know you can go from feeling like the lowest of the low to being almost to the highest of the high. So
Right.
what I mean, that's definitely a very interesting story that that would inspire almost anyone. So um, can you describe what a typical day was? During, like, I would say the height of your addiction. Like, what was like a typical day?
Well, the height of my addiction when things were good. Um, you know, I mean, we had a house, and there would be a closet that we had set up, and it would be 2,000 milliliter beakers full. All in different stages of production, and so we would start the day like, okay, we have this guy coming by, we got this going on. But when it was good, we were buying cars. Here's the crazy, like we growing up in this cow town, there were like pick and pulls around, right? And we would get bored and we'd go to the pick and pull. Hey man, what do you got that runs? Oh, I got these cars, and we'd just pay cash for them, and then we'd go do demolition derbies on the road, and then and then when they broke down, we just leave them there. You know what I mean? Like that was we were just young kids blowing money and getting high and going on trips and having a good time. But like when I moved to Vegas, like I what's crazy, I moved to Vegas of all places to
Yeah.
try to get away, you know, and it found me out there. I say it found me, I found it. But I was getting waved around metal detectors to get into clubs, and I wasn't paying covers to get into anywhere, and you know um but once I started seeing like, oh God, this is getting too much, and when I really tried to separate myself from it, because I was told by a dude when I moved out to Vegas, this place will chew you up and spit you out, and I was like, nah, man, not me. Well, I was wrong. Uh, and as my addiction got more important than making money, uh, I mean, I just started losing everything. But because when the idea got into my head that this was enough, it didn't mean I stopped, but I started taking steps to removing myself from it, which put me on the other side of the fence. You know what I mean? It started me, and now it was almost like there was blood in the water and the sharks were circling, you know. But ultimately, I was at the highest of the high, and seriously the lowest of the lows. Like I'll never forget one day like breaking down to tears to my girl because I was so tired, and nobody I knew would let me just sleep for a few hours because I didn't have any dope for them, you know. So I would get like shoot on, like get out of here, you got to go. And I was just exhausted, and I was just tired, and so I mean, those were two typical days, dude. In each scenario, it was just getting high literally all day long, you know, all day. I would smoke meth to go to sleep, and I would smoke it to wake up. And you know, if I didn't make a certain amount of money in a day, I like, when I was when I was small time, if I didn't make 500 to $1,000 profit, like I wouldn't stop running. Like I even had friends that are like, Jay, just kick it. Here's $500. They just throw me the money. Like, even though I had money in my pocket, if I didn't make that money that day, like I kept grinding, you know.
Mhm.
Um, and that snowballed into much bigger numbers, But yeah, my typical day was, you know what, bro? All I wanted to do was have a good time and take care of people around me. You know what I mean? As long as I was getting that positive reinforcement that, oh, everybody wants Jay here, even though it was about the drugs, it had nothing to do with me. But as long as I was getting that positive reinforcement, I kept the party going because I loved making people happy.
Right, right,
You know,
right. I mean,
so
so basically, I mean, you just was, you was enjoying feeling important,
yeah.
and
Yeah,
and
because what it came down to is that I've worked through this whole thing is, as a child, a very little boy. my mom was very young when I was born, and like she would have me go stay with my grandmother, and then she would take me back, and then I would, so this bouncing back and forth. So I was very loved when I was growing up, but I didn't feel wanted. And I realize that now. I didn't know that then. You know what I
Right.
mean? But today I realize I was loved, but I didn't feel wanted. And what I gained in the dope game was the feeling of being wanted, regardless of the reason. The reason was manufactured,
Right. Right.
but it gave me that thing that I was looking for.
Mhm. Yeah. So I mean, and that's the thing. I mean, that lets you know there, like, you know, you wasn't really doing it just to do it. You were doing it because it was something that was appeasing your past trauma. I guess you could say.
Right. Right. To me, that's exactly it. It was like temporarily healing the trauma. It was a band-aid that would continually get ripped off. Like it was a never the bleeding never stopped, so it had to continue, you
Right.
know.
So, what do you feel was the most challenging aspect of your recovery process?
um the reaching the reality, reaching the realization of why, like understanding that my addiction, and even once I made it, once the meth stopped and I got into the business world, I graduated college, I got into business, promotion, and the whole thing, and then the alcoholism started because it was crazy because it was the same but different on both sides, right? So I was getting the same high from going out drinking with my business buddies, because it was the acceptance yet again.
Right. Right.
And uh I'm sorry, I'm losing track of the question. What was the question again? I apologize.
No, 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 no. You find the most challenging aspect of your recovery.
Oh, so it was working through only recently that the reason why was that I was wanting to feel wanted, and that played out in both sides of my life, both in my drug addiction, and then once I made it out of the drug addiction into the business world, the alcoholism kicked in because I had an unchecked and I had an unchecked addiction, but I also never dealt with the why, which was my need to feel wanted and accepted. So that was the most that was the most challenging piece. That was the biggest hurdle, is facing the acceptance and understanding why. And ever since I started working through the why and understanding what drives this demon that sits on my shoulder that tells me to keep going that way, it's been a lot easier. But that only happened a year and a half ago, 2 years ago.
Mm,
Like I wouldn't dare sit here right now in front of you and try to tell you that I'm even in recovery had that not happened. Being sober and being in recovery, I think, are two different things, because you can still be an addict and be sober, because your why is unchecked.
right. Okay. I like how you put that. So how do you balance sharing your story publicly while still maintaining your professional image, like of who you are now?
Man, that's a great question. I had some people, from my past reach out like, Jay, how can you do this? Which, I have a really great relationship with the people that own the company that I'm the director for. Um, I don't hide who I am anymore. Like, if you want to judge me for who I was, that says more about you than about me. You
Right.
know, I don't. This is who I am, and I'm still flawed, and I'm still kind of a mess, dude. And I'll admit it. But knowing about who I was doesn't change who I am. And I've accepted me on my terms. So if you don't want to accept me on my terms, then I can't help you with that. That's something that's for you to work through. Why is who I was a problem for you? And I'm not saying that conversation has come up with my company or with the people that I work with in my side gig. But if it does come up, I'm not going to run from it, and I'm not going to hide who I am, because I think it's important. Like I was saying, if this is going to be my mission to truly reach people and to truly try to make a difference, I can't hide from who I am.
Right.
You know, because I think if I am able to ever help just a single person stay sober, get sober, have the desire to get sober, I can't live a double life like that. Like their need far supersedes what any company wants me to be, you know. Um, and I'm done looking for acceptance. You know, I accept me on my terms now.
Yeah, yeah, and that's what it's about. That's good. That's good. I mean, you sound like you made your peace with the prior trauma, and now you're on the other side of your life to where you're like, nothing bothers me, anymore. Now you're just all about making memories and so
Right.
on.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Okay.
got I got I got two young men that count on me to be the best example possible, and
Hmm.
you know, and my story's not unique. I grew up without a father. That plays into the whole not feeling wanted piece of it, right? So I'm trying to do the best I can for two young men with very little example. I had a wonderful stepfather. Don't let me take credit away from him,
Hmm.
but nonetheless, in those younger formidable years, I just know that I've got two young men that I have to set an example for, and I don't ever want them to not own whoever it is they know they are. Own it, bro. Like, just run with it and don't let anybody tell you otherwise.
Right, right. Yeah, as it should be. You know what I mean? We were all never parents until we were parents. So
Right.
I mean, so everything that you learn, you're learning as you go. So I mean, all you can do is try to do the best you can and live with the results. Um, so what role did mental play in your addiction, and how do you prioritize it now?
My mental health.
Yes, sir.
I so when I got out here on the East Coast and I found myself yet again in rehab, I connected with this woman. Her name's Angela Baxter. She gave me permission. I can use her name.
Okay.
um, but she and I really connected, and I this time I was able to share everything with her, and a lot of the steps that led me there, like I had been to AA, like in recent years, because alcoholism was the at the forefront at this time, and I'd go into AA and they're like, oh, you got to get a sponsor. So what did I do? My addict brain, I picked the person I could control, like, because that's how I was. I needed to control the situation. So that's not doing me any good. I
Mhm.
went into rehab, and like I was saying, like you watch these videos and they don't give you anybody to connect to. So I disassociated from there. But when I met Angela, she and I connected, and she got me to say the things, like the real things, you know. Um, and she came to me one day and she was like, I think I want you to go see this man. His name's Vince De Pasquale. He runs a place called Starting Point. And he's this like world renowned therapist. He deals mostly in uh, what is it? Codependency. Sorry, was drawing a blank there. So he deals heavy in codependency. But anyway, he was the one. He had me sit down one day and we talked, and we do over Zoom. And he said, next time we meet, I want you to have some pictures of young Jason sitting around you. And I was like, all right, you know. And so I got the pictures and I was sitting there. And the next time we met, and he goes, all right, you got your pictures? I said, yeah. He goes, all right, explain to young Jason everything you've been through and why you did it. And I was like, no, like, I don't want to, but it was at that moment that I stopped trying to control the situation,
Mhm.
and it was at that moment that I prioritized my mental health and began this journey of addressing the reason why I did any of this stuff, and again, it wasn't only until the last couple of years that I started prioritizing my mental health, because previous I was dealing with my mental health by either, in my 20s I was doing meth. In my 30s and early 40s I was drinking like a fish. Like, I mean, big time. Like, that was how I dealt with my mental health, you know. Um but it wasn't until I met these two very important people that did nothing more than let me be me and not expect anything from me, um that began to prioritize and really start taking big deep breaths and facing some facts, you know. um because I don't think a lot of people get the opportunity to really deal with their traumas, their anxieties, their depressions, like because we're always on, right? Like, the world is busy, life is busy, we prioritize ourselves last. And what I realized is if I don't take care of me, I'm not taking care of the people around me as good as I think I am.
Right, right.
Because the reality is if I don't prioritize myself, and I don't mean in like an arrogant, selfish way. I just mean
Right.
if I don't take care of my mental, if I don't take care of my physical, then these people that I say that I'm neglecting myself for are really not getting the best version of me.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, that's one thing I preach a lot to my brothers and my business partners and things like that. I tell them like, hey, if we don't make sure that we're okay, that we're good, then how can we make sure that everybody else is good? That rely on us.
Right.
They rely on us to be 100% all the time. So if we're going around and we're on 30%, how can we expect for them to be, where they need to be because they're relying on us? So
Right. Yeah.
um, I definitely understand what you're saying. So um, that was actually kind of maybe it kind of answered this question. I was gonna ask, how has your family been affected by your journey, and or maybe any kind of other relationships that you may have had too.
Well, my wife and I have been together. I'm 47 now. We've been together since I was 16.
Oh
She's
wow,
been on this whole ride, bro. So like, I'm very fortunate because I know a lot of dudes that don't have a rider. You know what I mean? Like, that's my girl, dude. Like, we've been through it all together. You know, um, and I don't. Now that my kids are 15 and 18, I don't hide that. I mean, first of all, I couldn't hide that I was an alcoholic from them. It was happening right in front of them.
yeah,
Um, but I don't hide any of this from them. You know, um, are some relationships strained? Like, do I have any friends from the past? I got one. My buddy Steve is still around. There's one dude left. And he was just one of them cats that always just saw through my bullshit. Like, he just always saw through it and just accepted me as I was. So it took a lot of years because when the meth was going on, like, I was stealing from family, like, I was, I was a problem. So it took a lot of years to repair that. you know and even now when I talk to my mom about stuff, she's like, you make sure you're not this. So I mean it's a mom being a mom, but I guess a great example of that is 2 years ago, I was prescribed some non-narcotic medication to deal with. It was like some, anyway. So I was having some back issues, and before I could go to physical therapy, they gave me these two non-narcotic, but my body couldn't process them, and they couldn't metabolize, and it stopped my heart twice, and I lost my memory for a week. Yeah, it's wild, bro.
what?
Of all the things I put in my body, and these two little
Right.
pills that are
Yeah,
non-narcotic. Right. So
that's crazy.
but what I noticed is when I was reaching out to people telling them about this, you could tell they were like, you know what I mean? Because they know me, like, so I've created a scenario around myself where even when I say that this is the situation, people wonder, is that really it? You know what I mean? Because the addiction was so long and the bullshit was so long
Mhm.
that I know that even family members of mine, I could tell by their response that they wondered, nah, is that really what happened? You know what I mean? So as far as the straining of relationships, look, man, I've been blessed with a great family. Is there distance that exists maybe a little more now? Yeah, but they still love me. But they'll always kind of be on guard. Like, when is Jay gonna do what Jay does again? You know, so that may never go away, but that's a condition of what I've done. I did that. Like, I can't get mad at them. I set that precedent for them,
Mhm.
so I can't get mad at them for that. Do I wish I could change it? Yeah, sure, but at the end of the day, I can't. I can't form thoughts for people. I'm the one that did this, so I have to accept that, the little side eyes when I say things.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
So,
that's understandable. So, um, what advice would you give someone currently struggling with any type of addiction?
oof. um, the one thing I know about people that are in active addiction is they want to tell their story, and I don't say, like, hey, start a podcast and use your real name and tell your whole story. Like, I'm not saying that. I'm saying, um they need to talk. They need to let it out. But see, what they really need to talk about, what I encourage anybody that's in addiction to talk about, is to stop putting any words after the question why. Why me? Why again? Why this? Because any word you add, in my opinion, any word you put after why is a deflection or an excuse. Okay, just answer for yourself why. And then when you answer that why, ask the next question, but just ask why. And really dig down, because the one thing I've learned about addiction is every day you wake up and you give yourself a new reason to be an addict. And if you don't let go of those and get down to that core, it's that old onion, metaphor, right? But see, here's the thing: is if you only deal with your surface of the onion, oh, the embarrassing thing you did at work or at a party or whatever, you know what I mean, and really dig, what is your why? Look for that. Um, and you don't yeah, I mean, it's best if you have somebody that can guide you through that, but honestly, like, if you can do that all on your own. You
Mm,
just have to have the courage to keep asking that question and get down to your reason. Not the reason that happened today, not the reason that happened the day you started your drug of choice or your alcoholism or whatever it is, but dig further. Keep digging. Get down to the real reason, the root, and start looking at that. And if you're not ready to dig that deep, um, I mean, it's a revolving door. Like I said, like, you can be sober and not in recovery.
mm,
So here's the thing, man. For those people that maybe don't deal and don't address their unchecked traumas, or whatever it is that led them to where they're at today, if they've found their higher power, if they've found God, and that's what keeps them sober, okay, fantastic. Keep running with that until you're really ready to deal with the reality of your situation.
mm. Okay, okay. So, what do you feel like has been the most rewarding aspect of sharing your story through your podcast?
The most rewarding.
Hmm. Or that makes you feel, that makes you feel the best about.
There's two things that come to mind. One of them, I always leave a way to contact me at the end, because I'm dead serious. Anybody that wants to talk, I'm willing to talk with them. And I had somebody reach out, this gentleman in Arkansas, and he was like, "Hey, man, I just want to let you know that I'm listening, and my wife says that your podcast does better for me than any of these meetings I go to." And I'm not gonna lie, man. I got like a little, like, teary eyed about it. Like, I got emotional. You know what I mean? Because
Mhm.
here's that one. Like, if I could reach just one person, and I reached one person, like, it was like I achieved my goal. Um, so that felt fantastic. I can't begin to even, like. I wish I could bottle that up the way that felt. Um, and there's been others since then, but he was the first one, and it meant the world to me. And then, honestly, the other piece of this is I did this podcast to tell the story, and then it wound up being therapeutic for me. The idea here was is to never tell these stories again and just put them out in the ether, and they're gone, they're out of my head. But what I really wound up doing is realizing who I am as a person by processing these things. Because when I stopped glamorizing it in telling these stories at parties or gatherings or whatever, I started processing the fact that, man, this stuff was crazy. You know, this the when you have the rose colored glasses on and you're looking at it because you lived through it and it's a funny story or it's a crazy story, but when you get down to the nuts and bolts of it, and it's scary and it's dangerous, and there's a piece of this story that affects me today, and now I'm working through it. It's been unbelievable. You know, the I mean, I used to get anxiety and panic attacks so bad I would hide under my desk at work. I would shut my door and lock my door, and I would sit under my desk and freak out. And I never really knew why. And that has not happened since I started doing this podcast.
Okay. All right. So you know what that means? That means we need you to keep doing it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm gonna keep going, man. I'm gonna keep going.
So how many episodes have you filmed?
44. I got 45 I'm recording, but honestly, if I had to guess, and here's the thing, man, like we're only right now telling the story about my addiction of meth, and I'm in Vegas. We're getting to the point where I come home and the meth stops, but then there's this whole other piece of, you know, who I became after the meth addiction. When I didn't get, I was sober, I wasn't in recovery. You know, I had a kid on the way. I had to do this, I had to do that, right? But then alcoholism kicked in. I have to talk about that. You know, I mean, if I had to guess, we're probably looking at probably 100 episodes before we catch up to today, you know.
Okay. Gotcha.
So but and then again, like once I catch up to real time, then we can start talking about our conversation. You know what I mean? Like I can start, you know, I try to share in my podcast what I learned
Mhm.
from this, and try to, you know, it helps me work through it, but it, you know, my insight as to what I took away from this scenario. But you know, even once the podcast catches up to real life, I can start really digging in to who I am today, why I am today, and what I'm doing. Because again, right now I'm just telling the story that leads us up to today, you
Right.
know. So it's almost like the podcast never has to stop, you know, like in reality, because every day I'm still learning and I'm still in recovery and I still struggle, you know, like I'm not fixed. I'm not better. I'll never be better, you know, but every day I'm gonna be a little better, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
I
so
mean, my one of my favorite phrases that I invented is "slow progress is better than no progress."
yeah, buddy. Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so let's see. Can you discuss the importance of self reflection in your recovery and your and professional growth?
Well, you know, I think we sort of kind of touched base on it a little bit, but I think it's important to own who you are.
Oh
You
yeah,
know, even if you know that this isn't your final form, you know, but this is who you are today, you know, embrace that and just know that you're on your journey. Because, you know, the more time we spend comparing ourselves to the people we want to be, the more time you spend walking backwards. Because the bar keeps moving. You keep watching these people and they're posting on Instagram or you know, Facebook or whatever you're on. But if you keep focusing on who somebody else is and you want to be that, you know, it's almost unachievable, because you're going to keep finding new finish lines, right? Just accept who you are today. This is who you are today. Know where you're going, but who you are today is okay. It's all right. You know, and I don't know that we collectively believe that for ourselves. You know, we always want more. We always, oh, you know, and I don't know that necessarily everybody's comparing themselves to somebody else, but if you're not sustained in what you have today, that's okay. But accept what is today, you know. Um, because like I said, once I started accepting myself on my terms, like this is who I am. I can't change who I am today. You know, I, tomorrow will be different, but this is who I am today. You know, and I certainly can't change nothing that I've already done.
No.
So there's no point in allowing yourself to focus on who that was. You
Right.
know, that person, it's done. You can't change it. You can't go back. The more time you spend thinking about that thing you did or the thing you wish you didn't do or whatever the case may be, you're just constantly walking backwards. So, yeah, I think self-reflection is important in that just own who you are today. You can't
Right.
change it. You can't change
Yeah.
it. It's the skin you're in, man. You can't. Tomorrow is not promised and yesterday's gone, like.
That's right. That's right. I agree. Um. So how do you how do you feel your perspective on success has changed from, you know, back, you know, when the addiction first started all the way until now?
That's a fantastic question, Alex. For me, um, so for a lot of years up until very recently, I was always chasing the bag. It was all about the money. You know what I mean? The next, when I was dealing dope, it was, nah, I'm not gonna. I used to get excited when I'd sell an 8 ball of dope, but then I wouldn't. It got to the point like you're not gonna buy, at least a quarter pound. Like I'm not gonna talk to you. You know what I mean? Like that was who I was then. And then I got into the business world and it was promotion, more money, more money, more money. And I recently, the job I'm in now, where I'm a director here, I left here for a while and I went and worked for this other company because they just offered me an obscene amount of money.
Mhm.
And then I started seeing the amount of time I wasn't home. And I realized that I didn't quality of life now is way more important. Like, are my bills paid? Yes. Do I want to make more money? Yeah, I do. But quality of life for me is way more important than chasing the bag anymore.
Right.
Now, of course, you got to make sure that you make enough to pay your bills and,
Oh,
and that kind of stuff. But when I stopped constantly looking for the next big thing, and when I stopped looking for the next big payday and just started appreciating the fact that I've got some work from home days every week. If I need to attend my son's wrestling or football or whatever, I can go, no problem. Like I work for a company that allows that, and so I left that I left here. I went to this other company for all this money, and then I was gone 16 hours a day. And I said, "Nah, this ain't it." And I called them. I said, "Hey, can I come back?" And they were like, "Yep, you sure can." And it was the most important move I've ever done because once I stopped chasing the bag and started paying attention to how important my quality of life is,
mhm.
that was ideal. Like it was like this weight came off of me. Quit chasing the money, man. Like look around, you're missing life chasing money, you
Yeah.
know. And and that's a fantastic question, dude, cuz it was 2 years ago and I chose quality of life over money and it was the most fantastic decision I ever made.
That's good. That's good. Last question before we get out of here.
Mhm.
Um, do you have any like future goals for your podcast or for any other advocacy work that you're doing?
Well, yeah, actually, I mean, I'd like to see my podcast maybe make its way to be a book. Like I'd love to. So here's the thing: is when I was, I don't know, 17 or 18, there was this commercial for the army, and not that I enlisted in the army by any stretch, but the at the end of the commercial it said, "If you wrote a book about your life, would anybody read it?" And I was like, "Woo!" Like that just hit me, and it stuck with me since I was 17. And now this podcast is doing really well, and so I'd like to see it become a book just because of that damn commercial when I was 17, because I want to know that somebody would read. I've done something worth reading, you know. So I'd like to see the podcast do something like that. I'd like to see it reach more people. I'd
Mhm.
like to know that it's helping somebody. It has. So an interesting thing that I didn't see coming with this is so that woman Angela that introduced me to Vince and he works at Starting Point. Well, Vince is about to retire. Angela's taking his position, and I took over Angela's recovery group. So actually, I'm like, so now I'm actually getting to help people by working through this stuff simply by,
Okay.
my life experience has led me there. So I've done enough work for myself that this place is trusting me to now guide other people through this. And so really someday I'd like to see myself get full time just in helping people deal with trauma, PTSD, anxiety, depression, addiction, but not taking, and I'm not taking anything away from like AA or NA or anything like that. But for some folks, that doesn't work.
Right.
And for the folks that doesn't work for, I want to present them another option because I just want people to be okay, you know. And so yeah, so maybe this podcast is my chariot to that. You know what I mean? But yeah. So I'd like it to see become a book. Maybe someday down the road, get to a point where I have conversations with folks just like you're doing right now. Once I'm done telling the story, let me open this up and let other people tell their story and let them help. Let me give a platform to people to give them the opportunity to share their story and allow people to connect with somebody other than just myself.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, that's a great way to look at it. And I mean, I'm pretty sure, you'll achieve all the goals that you want to achieve. Because you have the right mindset and uh, I mean, you're doing it. I mean, you're already doing it now. The only thing now is to, like you said, turn it into a book. I mean, the book is already written.
Right, right,
It's already there. You just don't have it on paper. So
right, right.
so
Yeah.
yeah. So I definitely want to tell you thank you for taking your time out of your busy schedule to come on and have a chat with me and tell your story to the audience so that way maybe it'll help someone else be able to whether or not they need to tell their story or they need to talk to someone so that way they don't contemplate doing something that they shouldn't do.
Yeah.
So I definitely appreciate you. Tell you appreciate you for taking the time out to come on.
No, Alex, I thank you for having me, bro. I love this. This was a great conversation, man. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Definitely no problem. So everyone is watching. You guys, we appreciate you guys for tuning in, and you guys have just watched another episode of All in All with Alex, and we'll see you guys on the next episode. Peace.